really excited tonight to have Brian Hawker. He's coming from his job at, he's the VP, the Vice President at KXAS, Channel 5, which some of you probably have been around since it was WBAP in the old days. He is Vice President of Digital Media, Programming, and Research, and he's currently leading the station's expansion onto new distribution platforms like TV Everywhere and Sony PlayStation Vue. He directed the local rollout of Cozy TV, a network programmed with iconic television series on digital channel 5.2. At the station, he wears many hats, dealing with compliance with FCC, purchase of new programming, research, and general operations. He recently has been instrumental in seeing that the archives and history of Channel 5 is preserved for the future. And I'm so excited for him to come tell you where that is and how we can find it too. Brian and his wife are 32-year residents of Fort Worth, and they've been very active in the community. Brian has served as the chair of the Cowtown Marathon Board and the American Marketing Association FWGS chapter. So please help me welcome, bringing to for the Genealogical Society tonight, Brian Hawker.
Thank you so much, Debbie. It is a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I happen to think small crowds are more intimate and easier to get to know everyone, so I thank you very much for coming out. This program tonight, I will just give you a warning, is not specifically targeted to genealogical studies, if you will. Okay, so by no means, you're an expert in that area. I'm not. Debbie had the opportunity to see this presentation, or one very similar to it, a couple of months ago, and she thought it would be applicable to you folks. But I want to kind of give you that warning up front, but you know what you do, and I think as you see this, perhaps you'll see opportunities for your craft. And you know, if you don't like it, just please tell Debbie. She got me here. So with that, what we're going to do is I've kind of set it up as a brief history of NBC5 and WBAP. And then as part of that, what we are doing to preserve really the history of the community in images. And I have a little video to show you down the line, and let's just get started. So, oh yeah, that's me. Hold on. Sorry, that's my responsibility. Suzanne rolls the video. So, WBAP-TV, how many of you are native Fort Worthers? Okay, how long have you folks been here?
How long have you?
50 years.
50 years, okay, that counts. And sir? 53 years, all right. So I would wager that you're well familiar with WBAP or KXAS. So the station, if you don't know, the station's founder was Amon Carter, who I'm sure you know Amon's history, West Texas oil man, business person, started the Star Telegram, combined the Star Telegram, and started the radio station, WBAP. And back in the 40s, when television stations were beginning to start up across the country, Amon Carter says, I want one of those things for the people of Fort Worth. And he brought his men together, and I dare say back then it probably was a group of men, and he said, gentlemen, I want you to go out and I want you to find me the highest spot in Tarrant County. We're going to buy that piece of land and we're going to build ourselves one of these newfangled television stations. And they went out and they came back and they sat down and they said, well, Mr. Carter, we have good news. We found the highest spot in Tarrant County, and we have better news. You own it. So, that was out on the east side of Fort Worth. How many are familiar with where the original facility is? On Broadcast Hill, right off Oakland Boulevard. So that's where we were for over 65 years. I've been with the station 32 years, incidentally. I don't think I had mentioned that yet. So this was not the original, but an old test pattern that went on the air back in September 15th of 1948. The FCC authorized WBAP to begin broadcasting to the community on September 29th, 1948. So this was an early, they put up a test pattern early. But an interesting thing happened. Just before that, 1948, the campaign of Harry Truman was coming through downtown. Does anybody know the stories of this or seen the pictures of this? Sure, Billy Beth. Billy Beth's a longtime employee of the station.
41 years and 3 months.
One more time?
41 years and 3 months.
I'm after you, but I'm not there yet.
I know, she'll catch up.
I'm working on it. I'm afraid she's going to call me out on some of this. But so they were coming to town. Harry Truman was coming to town on September 27th. Keep in mind, we were authorized to go on the air on September 28th. Eamon Carter, huge Democrat, friend of the president's, said, well, I'll tell you what, if Harry Truman's coming to town, he's going on our television station, pardon my French, be damned, the FCC. And he put them on the air that day with that, and then kind of unceremoniously also went off the air accidentally, but it was actually the original programming on WBAP, which is kind of cool. Debbie mentioned I'm responsible for FCC compliance today at the station, and I can tell you, if I did something like that, go on the air one day early, it would be my last day at the station. I would not have lasted the 30 years that I had. So we were off and running on September 27th. There, you all said you recognize it. This was a facility, a pretty old picture by the cars. But of course the building still stands. It's being used by the city now. The original call letters, WBAP, signified we bring a program. And that's, of course, there's WBAP radio to this day. So it was from there that, our history really began, rich history of local broadcasting. First, local golf tournament with the Colonial, the dough crust, what's the...
Light Crust Doughboys.
Thank you. Light Crust Doughboys from WPAP Studios. There's a picture lower right of the circus when it came to town, the Clydesdales coming through the studio. Really a wonderful building. How many of you had the opportunity to visit the building or be in the building? Yeah, so it was purpose-built for television, which was unique back then. And no one was sure what we would really need for television, right? So it was built in the form of a small movie studio. 40-foot high ceilings, catwalk around the perimeter, 3 large, huge stage doors. Billy Beth remembers that you could bring things like the circus in. You could bring cars in, you could bring large objects and stage elements. So the history continues with the local talent local and national talent that we developed. Of course, this is Bobby Wygant and some images from the many celebrities that she interviewed in her day. And of course, I hope if you haven't had an opportunity that you pick up her book that she's out now for the past number of months selling. And we helped her pull together images for that book. She had a lot of images to begin with. Harold Taft, I would say, is certainly the single person most affiliated or referenced when you talk of meteorology and WBAP. So Harold was one, and forgive me if you know this story, he was one of 3 meteorologists working for American Airlines back in the 40s, in the late 40s, early 50s. He was the youngest of the 3. And these meteorologists were watching WBAP come on the air. We were doing some news we'll take a look at in a little bit. And they thought, what if we added weather to the news? So they contacted the station. Again, a group of folks running the station got together. And I just, being in broadcasting for as long as I have, I can kind of imagine how the debate went. So they're considering this, and it's like, weather. We've got weather in the Star Telegram every morning. People get it there. We're doing weather on WBAP radio like about every hour or so. Why would we need to put weather on TV? What's the advantage of that? Well, kind of the rest is history. So they started with weather telefax back in the late 1940s. Harold Taft, the youngest of the group, was the one who stuck around and really stuck in the minds of viewers. And he's legendary. And to this day, we are best known, our strongest brand in the market is our weather coverage, right? Hopefully you've tuned in the last 3 Sundays, right, when it was like, yeah. So that's Harold Taft. But there are other legends. Bob Schieffer came through the station. He was a reporter first at the Star-Telegram and then a reporter for WBAP before he went on to Washington and worked many years with CBS. There are others, Boyd Mattson, if you'll remember, Charlie Rose actually had an interview show. Scott Pelley was a reporter at WBAP more recently, back in the 90s, I guess, right? So the other thing I throw up here for you historians is just kind of try and track. Ownership changed over the years, though it was still WBAP-TV. But in 1974, I'm sure many of you remember this, you locals, Carter Publications decided to divest itself of both properties. I'm going to have to take a sip of water here.
They didn't do it because they wanted to. They were forced to by the government.
It's funny, when I take a drink of water, I hear a little voice in my head. And so they said that they were forced by the government. So, so what Billy Beth is referring to, the government came out and said you could no longer own a major newspaper and an electronic media in the same market. Now, interestingly, Dallas got away with that, right? Bilo continued with the Dallas Morning News and WFAA-TV. But, and you know, I don't know the specifics because I wasn't there, Billy Beth, but they could have divested of just one, but they decided to sell both properties. And they sold the Star-Telegram to Cap Cities, Inc., and WBAP-TV to Lynn Broadcasting. And that is when I came aboard after the Lynn Broadcasting transaction. Lynn, because now the radio station was over, it should say Cap Cities as well, we didn't want to have the same call letters in a different company, right? So that stayed with the radio station. KXAS for Texas became the call letters for Lynn. Billy Beth and I worked together back in those years. Although I didn't get there until the late 80s, actually. So Lynn Broadcasting had different controlling interests over the years, including Hicks Muse in Dallas and actually AT&T. And then significant dates were 98 when NBC purchased the station, and in 2011 we were purchased by Comcast, which owns NBC Universal now. So we're actually a Comcast NBC Universal entity, fully owned. What is that? Are we okay? Okay. So 2013 is a pivotal date in my story. There again is the picture out on Broadcast Hill. So we're now 65 years into the life of the station. And it was with any property 65 years old, you certainly have to continue doing maintenance, which we had been doing all that time. But you know how much television and technology has changed since the early days, since the founding in the 40s. I mean, it's dramatic. It's dramatic how much it's changed in the last 15 years. So think about back then. So the facility just became more and more difficult to keep up, right? And again, nowadays in TV, you don't need that large studio that we were talking about. That space can be used more efficiently. There were just a lot of issues that were becoming very costly to maintain. So we set out to come up with a new facility. It was important to us to stay in the city of Fort Worth, which we did, but we moved out to Amon Carter Boulevard. Does anybody know where we're at now? We're in the Centerport development out near American Airlines headquarters, just south of DFW Airport. I don't know if I said that. We had the opportunity to choose our street address, which is pretty neat. I didn't know you could do that, but we could do that. We were like first on that block. So it's easy to remember. It's easy for me anyway. 48, the year we were first on the air, and Channel 5. So we're 4805 Amon Carter Boulevard. So 2013, moving an entire broadcast facility, in all about 200 employees. What's the first thing you have to do when you move? Clean out the basement. This is where the story gets really interesting from a historical perspective. So this was a room in our basement. Billy Beth may remember it.
Yep.
These boxes of film, tape, and scripts. So the Texas News was the newscast back in the day, back in the 40s. And I want to tell you briefly how that was produced. So what there were photographers, as there are today, but those photographers today carry digital cameras out into the field. Back then it was film cameras. And people still say film, but you know, since film there's been tape, now there's hard drives, there's digital. But back then it was film. A photographer would go out, shoot film, maybe with or without a reporter, bring that film back to Broadcast Hill. They would literally develop it in a developing lab in the back, just as today, well, they don't develop film today at Walgreens, but they used to. Develop that film, and then the reporter or the photographer would write up the script, an editor or producer would be involved in it, and they would splice together the stories of the day. They would splice that film together onto a reel. Let me see what my next. Yeah, here we go. So it got put onto reels, and then that reel, which ran about 10 to 15 minutes back in the late 40s, was played on TV, and an announcer would read the script, which obviously was the narrative of the pictures you were seeing on the screen. So it was kind of like a newsreel format. So at the end of the newscast, they would pull that reel of film off the projector. They would put a piece of tape over it, put a date on it. I can't read it from here, but like April 15th, 1949, and they would put it in a very sophisticated archive system, a cardboard box. Okay. So what is really interesting, and this is a picture of a script that, again, the announcer would have read that would relate to the film. What's really interesting is this picture was taken right in 2013. This film survived in this condition in a room that we had kind of sealed off, but nothing fancy, in the basement at Broadcast Hill. Summer, winter, it was the place is a fortress, but fortunately the climatic conditions were just right. Most of the film was not contained in tins, which they do nowadays, or they have done for a long time. It would have oxidized had that been the case, but it wasn't. It was out to the open air. And it was, it's miraculous that it survived, and it's very fortunate it survived. These are a stack of some logbooks, WBAP. This is some of the material that was in the basement. Specifically, when we counted it all up, there were about 10,000 reels of 16mm film, which covered the period 1951 to 79. So the earliest stuff did not make it. Over 200,000 pages of scripts, and you can see still images as well as later archive tapes from the 70s through the 2000s in those daily logbooks, which I showed you. So the question became what to do with all of this. And several of us at the station realized that it was a wonderful repository of local history, we believe. So I set out to talk to some people in town. We thought, I felt in deference to Eamon Carter and the fact that he started the station, and there were descendants of Eamon still around in the foundation, that we should talk to them, and we did. They were very polite, interested, and it was actually through some connections that they gave us that we ended up going to the University of North Texas. We talked to other big schools in town, purple, but when we spoke to UNT, they showed tremendous interest and convinced us that they really had the resources and the wherewithal to do what we needed to do with this. And I wasn't sure what we needed to do with it, but I knew it had to be digitized or exactly how to do that, but they are experts in that. So they brought a team of people in. They're the ones who physically counted it. They helped us with the move. They relocated it to what is a secret location in Denton County. I've been there. I can't tell you where it is, but and that's where it's housed. So, whoops. So now the question was, how do we tackle this project, right? Thousands of reels of film. So what UNT talked about doing, and we thought it was a good idea, is they had a history professor who was interested in studying, in 1956, there was an issue with the integration of the Mansfield Public Schools that was well known in the community. Some of you, I see some of you nodding your head that you remember that. So that was in August, September of 1956, and they have a history professor who's, I would call the expert nowadays on that incident and on that story. So we sent away, UNT sent away 4 weeks worth of newsreels of film from 1956, had it digitized, cleaned and digitized. Very slow process, painstakingly slow process. Cleaning the film, digitizing it, getting it back on rolls. And then what we did with that was we put that together into what I call a sizzle reel to kind of explain the project. So, if you've nodded off, which it's warranted at this point, it's happened to my audience before. Wake up now, because this 5 minutes of video is like the key to the whole thing, all right? So Suzanne, if you would be kind enough to roll this, and I'll be back after more water.
We did not introduce fire to this compound.
There is no substitute for winning.
This is history. A step back in time. A peek at the stories that matter to North Texans.
It started out as a simple story. It's ended up being quite a dramatic one.
A glance at what was unique. A closer look at what is important.
No, we did not get that.
From football games to visits from politicians and celebrities, these images bring history to life and tell the story of local television as a medium. WBAP-TV signed on as Texas' first television station in 1948, creating the Texas News, setting the tone for delivering local news for years to come. Today, NBC5 and the University of North Texas have partnered to create the largest known online archive of local television news, spanning 70 years. Through historic 16mm film, videotape, photos, broadcast scripts, and research materials used in TV news production, the archive is a chronicle of stories that mattered most to North Texans. Historic moments which have been lost or forgotten, and tell the story of how television news forever changed the way we see the world around us.
And it will make it very difficult for any labor unions to organize in areas where unionization is absolutely imperative.
Today, researchers and the public can search tens of thousands of original broadcast scripts and news segments, and can also stream digitized footage for free through the portal to Texas History. The archive has been accessed over 700,000 times since its 2014 inception, and the annual number of visitors continues to increase. The diversity and unique experiences of the North Texas community is proudly on display through tens of thousands of original broadcast scripts and news segments. Users can also stream digitized footage with attached scripts for context.
Firemen battled more than 25 fires yesterday, the biggest of them this blaze, which swept across 500 acres of grass and timber near the Lindbergh community southeast of Fort Worth.
These sights and sounds of history provide an important cultural perspective not always captured through writing on a page, and are freely available to teachers, students, scholars, and the general public. Major production studios and filmmakers have accessed the portal to Texas History and licensed footage found nowhere else. The The content available online today represents only 1/6 of the complete archive. UNT archivists will continue their work to preserve and digitize more material, but funding is needed to support staff and students working to digitize footage and carefully document scenes for easy searchability. Film and video digitization are costly real-time processes which require extensive cleaning and repair of the material. A goal of more than $3 million in additional funding has been set to completely digitize and preserve the archive. Contributions to support the digitization of the NBC5 WBAP archive will provide resources to preserve the rich history of these North Texas images for generations to come. The University of North Texas has been creating leaders and visionaries for over 100 years, and the UNT Libraries is the only library in the Southwest with the technological capabilities to take on such a project. UNT is an essential force in teaching and research, providing leadership and innovation and learning. NBC5 is proud to be Texas' first television station and continues to convey that today through the Texas Connects Us brand. NBC5 and UNT are honored to offer access to more than 60 years of events, the stories, and the people that shape North Texas. The portal to Texas history, Texas Connects Us.
Did you enjoy that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Great. Well, that is just a small piece of what's available. We're going to explain to you how you can get to it. I now regret not somehow working video of Billy Beth in there back from the day. Surely they have something of us working, right? We work feet from one another. Is this going to go? Yes. Okay. So much of early TV was live. That's how it was presented and not recorded. That's one of the unique things about this, that these newscasts were put on films, some of the early things that you saw, and were preserved again. So Channel 8 has some of this, has some information, or has some archives at SMU. There is a station in Georgia that has a pretty rich archives, but the archivist at UNT, the librarian in special collections, has done quite a bit of research. And frankly, this is one of the largest collections of its type in the country, in local TV. It's really a daily record of news, which you get from our community, from North Texas. And while there's, I love in the Star Telegram, there's always the picture every week, I think on Mondays or what have you, or maybe it's in the Sunday paper now, from the archives that they have at UTA, right? They tell a bit about it. That's great, but these moving pictures, I think speak wonders. So it's available online. How many of you are familiar with the portal to Texas history? Okay, good. So have any of you accessed this material to date through there? Wow, fascinating. So Debbie was at the last presentation I did, so
I went home right then and did some.
So there you go. So I think I'm going to pick up at least 5 more of you. I put a handout on the table as you leave or as you come in, and it has links that you can go to. You can also access it all through the NBCDFW.com website if you search for portal up there. Just a wonderful resource. And when back in 2012, 2013, when I was talking to the university, they had me to a reception where they were recognizing the portal because it had digitized its 1 millionth newspaper page. So the portal kind of got started, and I met the founder. She's a wonderful lady. One of the primary principal people involved in starting it up was to preserve local newspaper history throughout the state of Texas. It's now tied in with Oklahoma. It's just fascinating. Folks such as yourself, which are into research and obviously have the patience to do genealogical research, will just go wild on this site. So this is a typical display of a news clip that's available. So of course you can search by year, by a whole bunch of metadata, keywords and things such as that. So this is something I know Debbie mentioned, and I'm sure she could go into it another time where she found some associations of folks that she knew by just plugging their names into the search. The search is incredibly effective. That's one of the reasons it takes time to get the material into the portal, because they have these researchers behind the scenes entering all this metadata. But it is so impressive. And a reminder, we have all these scripts, which is another thing that makes this collection unique. So much of that black and white video that you saw would be silent were it not for these scripts that the narrator read to you, right, that I told you. All of those scripts have been scanned and are online. So that's one of the people come to us, and if you find something in the scripts that you're interested in, what we ask for is donations, and depending on what it is and how it can come about, or who you are, if you what you're researching, the university will digitize that film for you, okay, or video that you find in the scripts, if that makes sense. Sorry, we're okay on time, right? We're closing in here. I tend to get a little excited and go a little long at this point. So what does the future hold? The goal is a complete digitization of the film and scripts. I told you we're actually done now with the scripts from back in the film days. Otherwise, it's logbooks. It's really interesting. The oldest stuff, the scripts tell the best story. When we stopped using film and went to tape, we started using a process whereby it was just saved in logbooks with really what we call slugs, news story slugs with keywords. Much more difficult to search, frankly. You can find things, but you're not sure what the actual story is versus the scripts. So the film is complete from those years. So see, it's taken us this long just to get that done. Again, we started in '56. Scripts through 70, but then again, scripts kind of changed after 70. So fundraising, it's a $3 million project, we estimate, to get the whole archives done. So I'm proud to say the Amon Carter Foundation stepped up originally and made a sizable contribution. And my company, Comcast NBC Universal, made a sizable contribution at the outset. The university is going out seeking grants, and we invite donations from anyone, including, if you'd like to contribute $25, $50, you can do that on the site. This is a let's go past this now and see if we have any questions. That's one more video that we can look at if you'd like. So again, the uniqueness of the collection is really telling the stories of our local culture from days gone by. It's a chronicle of the history of our community. It's among the largest archives of its tape. And one of the things that has been fascinating to me is I've had the opportunity to speak to groups such as yourself. I've spoken to university groups, students in a sophomore college class, and pardon me. So I'm about to show the video from film in the 1950s, and I'm thinking, what are these college students going to think of this, or how are they going to react to it? And to a person, people find it just fascinating, something about it. And I explained to them, and we all understand this, but whereas I can take a picture of you right now in this room with my phone and send it around the world in seconds, we know we can do that, right? But back when this started, in 1948, when WBAP signed on the air, you and I know that was the only way to get pictures across the earth, right? Across the land. So these images, someday, as time goes on, are truly the birth of a medium. Truly the birth of a medium in local TV. And we're just delighted that we can still operate and broadcast in the community, and hopefully some of you watch us now and then. We're grateful for that, and we're grateful that we're able to present this resource to you. Please familiarize yourself with the portal. not for me, but for your work in genealogy. I have a feeling there's some tie there. Please consider a donation, and most of all, and Debbie wins the award today for this, spreading the word because she got you here. Okay? Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm happy to answer some questions as time permits.
Yeah. You might tell them about Cozy TV. That was new to me when I came to the first one, and Tim, your friend and my friend, was telling me, I guess we kind of have to go back to buying the little digital bars if we're on cable TV.
So how many of you watch Cozy? You watch Cozy? Okay. So, yeah.
It's on Time Warner, or Spectrum.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
It is, yeah. So Cozy TV is on Spectrum. However, yeah, the point was, I think that it is, obviously, it's available over the air. I don't know how many of you watch us over the air, but it's the best way to watch broadcast TV today if you haven't done that. Of course, it's for free. You don't have to pay the cable company. Yes, Cozy TV is a lot of older TV shows, but it's really it's become quite popular and a good market for us. Billy Beth.
In all of that material, along with Bobby Wygant's program, do you know if any of the people who came, their autographs?
Autographs of the
stars who came.
Of the stars. So I would have to ask Bobby that question, and I haven't. Pardon me. She has that material.
Yeah, so
that was associated with her show.
Because every time I found out every time somebody was coming, I took my pencil and paper and went down and got their autographs.
Oh, that's neat. And you still have those?
Somewhere.
Somewhere?
But one of the ladies, stars, I asked for an autograph, and she says, I'll have to have a donation to, it was for a foreign organization.
Oh, really?
For children or something like that. And she thought that got rid of me. I said, oh, okay. So I goes upstairs, I get some money, I take it back down, and I give it to her, and I get her autograph.
Nothing about that story surprises me. I worked with Billy Beth. So no, that's nice. Thank you for sharing that, Billy Beth. So like autographs like that, if you find those, you know, I have new insight now into archivists and librarians, and I really respect what they're doing. And I would consider donating something like that to the university, you know, and
since I'm a graduate of the university, I'll be glad to.
You do that, and they would tie it to this collection that these are visitors of the station. That is really cool. They would get a kick out of that, and they would get it on the portal. And something like that is easy to digitize.
Oh, I even had one of the man who was running for president of the United States. One of the engineers came upstairs and says, "Beth, where's your Texas cup?" I said, "It's right here." We want to borrow it. I said, "You want to do what?" And oh yeah, they wanted to borrow it. Now mind you, they knew nothing about who I was, but they wanted to take my cup down and let this, I don't know whether it was
politician or something.
It was one of the presidents. Let him use it. Yeah. Where's the Secret Service? I said, all right, you can, but you better be better.
Take care of it.
Walked out that door, I better have my cup back. I had to go find my cup.
Questions?
Presidents drink out of your cup.
Ma'am?
Yes, you said that 1/6 of the project is complete and you need $3 million to complete it. So it's complete up through 1970. So anything after 1970 is still being cleaned and digitized for digital.
It's complicated, okay? Because there's different elements to that, including tape and script. I said scripts through 1970. That's what was up there, is digitized. So there's video that has not been digitized up until 1970. That was referring to scripts, that particular 1970 reference. So, like I say, if you found something in the scripts from 1968 that was, so it's interesting now that we've, made this, we've organized it, right? It's not just in the basement, we've organized it. So, Ross Perot, EDS Systems, I think it's EDS Systems, or as Hillwood Development came to us and wanted video of some Ross Perot for something that they were doing. And they managed to search scripts and find references to Perot systems, et cetera, to Ross Perot. And EDS paid to have that digitized for the university, right? And so, and that could be, it would be a couple $100 or something like that, right? But researchers who have a valid project and are working on, the university will do it. You just kind of just get in line, right? We have, I don't know if I had it on there or not, but major networks, CNN has purchased licensed is the correct word, licensed footage from the university to use in longer pieces, to documentaries, etc.
Our public service announcements, were they saved? Like we were on television have an ad for the Genealogical Society.
Yeah, PSAs. So a limited numbers of those were saved. They haven't been digitized yet. What was kind of interesting though is they would use. You're familiar with slates. So say Frank Kent Cadillac would sponsor the weather. So a still photographer would go out and take just a crystal clear shot of Frank Kent Cadillac on Lancaster Avenue, black and white, and bring that back to the station, and they make a negative, and they make an image for video, or an image for the TV screen. All of those were saved. So there's great black and white images of the community.
I did our PSAs for the organizations, and I had a slide to go with it.
Yeah, so some of that very well could be around, really bad. Other questions? Yes, ma'am.
So everything then that was in the basement is at UNT?
That's correct. Plus, then, when they did such a good job with that, we had more tape that wasn't in the basement, tape from the 80s and the 90s, and we have sent that to UNT, and that's in the videotape format. Interesting thing there was, I was very all in on the stuff from the 1950s, from 56. I found that fascinating. This is where you date yourself, right? I've been there 30 years. I was born in the late 50s, but these, I'll call them kids at UNT, to them, the 80s are really fascinating. So they enjoy digitizing that video, and to them, that seems just as old as 1950s video seems to me, 50s film. That makes sense.
Put a keyword in. You just put a keyword in, and people will see what comes up.
Yeah, and I think that if you picked up a slip, it'll show you that. Yeah, put in a keyword, but there's so much on the portal in addition to what we offer. Okay, any other?
Weather reports on there?
Pardon me?
Our weather reports.
No one has asked me that question. I can't say for sure, but see, the difference between weather and these newscasts that I'm telling you about are weather was live, which so much of local TV was. We talked about the Light Crest Doughboys and things like that. That was all done in the studio, immediately out to your homes, as was weather every day, right? So no, that would not have been recorded. So weathercasts are not going to be on there for the most part. Yeah, there's so much TV that was just gone because it was live. I'm not trying to walk off stage. I'm trying to look for my... I typically ask a few questions, and I have a... See how well you've been listening. A small token of our appreciation here. So you heard about Cozy TV, which is a network we operate. There's another significant network that we operate. Does anyone know what that is? Out of our facility in East Fort Worth. All right, here's a hint. It's not an English language network.
It's the Spanish station.
Telemundo. I'm going to give it to the lady who said Telemundo. So you, ma'am, have been very attentive, and you knew Telemundo. You get a free set of, we'll pick it up afterwards. These are coasters with that sign-on pattern, test pattern that you saw earlier in the presentation. I'll tell you right now, they are not from 1950, okay? They're more current. Someone took these once and said, these don't look that old. I'm like, no, they were made a couple of weeks ago, somewhere. I mentioned, and you may have said, what do we estimate the cost of digitizing the rest of the collection would be?
3 million.
3 million. You said 3 million.
She asked the question.
You win that one? Give me that. What else did I have down here tonight? Yeah, I like this question kind of, and there's some folks here, I think somebody's going to know the answer to this. So, one of the things that we face today in our industry is fragmentation, right? Audience fragmentation. Because years ago, we know there were a limited number of networks that offered programming. And it was great for us because you watched one of just a couple of networks. Today, there are so many alternatives. It's made the industry very competitive, and it's really kept us on our toes. Back when this started in 1948, there were actually 4 networks on the air. Who can name those 4 networks for me?
Television?
Television.
WBAP.
No.
Networks.
Oh, network. ABC,
National.
NBC, CBS.
NBC?
I said NBC.
Oh.
NBC, ABC, CBS.
TBS.
PBS?
No.
No?
Not P, T.
TBS, no.
Let's turn the broadcast.
That's Turner Broadcasting.
Turner Broadcasting, but I'm talking back in 1948.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Pretty early.
The 4th network. Oh boy, have I stumped the crowd?
Yeah.
Was it a D?
It starts with a D. I stumped the crowd. We'll go on to that question. It's Dumont. Somebody remember that?
Never heard of it.
Okay, look them up. So the Dumont network,
Gotta be before I was born.
D-U-M-O-N-T. There was a gentleman's name. He started the network because he was manufacturing TVs, Dumont TVs, and he saw, that was one of the things back then. How do you get people to buy TVs? Well, offer more programming. So the Dumont network was on for a number of years, back when they programmed 5 days, before they even programmed 7 days a week.
Was that in New York?
Yes, I'm going to say yes, yeah, because all of the major networks back then were out of New York. LA was not a significant enough player in the industry. So I shared this a little bit with you before. What is the best way to watch the best signal offered in local broadcast TV today? How do you do that?
Over the air on high def.
Not cable, high def.
High def on cable.
But what do you have to put up at home to get the?
Antenna.
Oh.
Correct. That's yours. An antenna, over-the-air TV. And one more. NBC and Telemundo, I'm kind of looking forward to it in a painful way. Over the next 2 evenings are hosting the first presidential primary debates. So they've split the field of 1,000 or whatever. Tomorrow night and the following night. What city is that occurring in? We'll have it live.
Miami.
Yeah, who said Miami that hasn't gotten one of these? That's yours then, okay. So tune in tomorrow night if you'd like to watch out the next 2 evenings. You've been very kind. Thank you very much for your time.
May I ask you if you know what the most entertaining TV show was in the 48s and 49s on Saturday night?
You may ask, and I'm going to let you answer.
Wrestling.
Okay.
Wrestling.
It was?
That was the most important thing. They had to watch it on Saturday.
Well, it remains very popular too. So
But I
yeah.
mean, that was it back then, on Saturday night.
Wrestling. She said wrestling.
Thank you. Well, I think you can agree that was quite entertaining and a lot of good information. And I was telling him, I said, well, genealogists have to be a lot of things. You have to have a medical knowledge because you're investigating the deaths of your ancestors. You're coming across weird diseases. You've got to be a social, what is it, when you study people, the sociologist. You've got to be a lawyer because you've got to understand a lot of legal terms when you're digging into wills and everything. So you really have to have a very broad knowledge. And if you are interested in history, and that you have to be a genealogist, and if you're from Fort Worth, you're going to find something in there. And Billy Beth, I want to see if I can show you before we get out of here tonight. I was doing a search on DRT, and I found an interview with your mom and another lady in 1986. I forgot to look that up before. I had a lot going on, but let's see if we can see it in a minute here. But
thank you.
Yeah, it was amazing. But you just never know. And he said these reporters, they'd send him out. Sometimes not even the reporter, just the photographer, and they just go roam the city looking for news. And you just never know what who got interviewed or who happened to be in a picture. And then there's several things that I'm thinking, I kind of remember a news story and watching something on TV. I wonder if I can find that. So that's one of my tasks I'm going to be looking at. But for all of you genealogists, the portal is just amazing. There are genealogical societies that have donated their journals over time that you can search by keyword and by name. I found a church record out of Shelby County, Texas, where my ancestor who came in 1839, he was a member of a church. He was being appointed a deacon. I was so excited to find out he had a church history. And there's photographs. There are, in a few places, some county records that the county was getting rid of, and the portal ended up with them. And like you said, the newspaper collection is just amazing. So we've all got to just support the portal. So appreciate you coming tonight. Thanks a lot. Getting that in there.